What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ. This is Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video, we're going to be talking NBA on PrizePicks. That's right, the NBA is back. Now, it's not back in a major way, meaning there's only 2 games to talk about tonight, so a total of 4 teams on the slate. So not a ton of NBA talk here, but nonetheless, NBA is back, and I'm sure for a lot of you out there, you are relieved. And in case you didn't see it, PrizePicks is running a deposit promo. So if you're redepositing on PrizePicks, they're going to do a 100% match on your deposit up to $100. So if you drop in 25, they're going to match it and give you 25. If you drop in 50, they're going to match it and give you 50. And they're going to go all the way up to $100. So that's a good way to get you back up on your feet and back into the action if your account on PrizePicks is starting to run a little bit dry. But if this is your first time to the channel, welcome to Out of Bounds DFS. On this channel, we talk all things single player daily fantasy sports. Right now, the primary focus is PrizePicks and NBA, but in the future, we're going to be talking more probably about Monkey Knife Fight and getting into some of the other sports. In fact, I covered NHL just yesterday, so definitely hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and keep an eye out for new content daily. So, without further ado, I already alluded to it and mentioned that we've got a 2-game NBA slate tonight, a small one, but a good one. So, we'll start with injury news like we typically do here, and not a whole lot of major injury news to consider, but we got to talk about some of these guys here. So, LaMarcus Aldridge, San Antonio Spurs forward. He's facing Dallas tonight. He is probable to play with a stomach illness, but he should be A-OK. Derek White, point guard for the San Antonio Spurs. He's probable tonight with COVID protocol, so he's going to be back in the lineup. Rudy Gay, also probable tonight for the Spurs, COVID protocol. And you got Grayson Allen out with a head injury. Devin Vassell and Ish Smith, guys that aren't really going to make much of an impact on tonight's NBA slate. So there you have it in terms of injury, short and sweet. And when we last saw you, when we were talking NBA on PrizePicks, we were discussing a little metric that I call DVA that I found over on Roto Grinders, which is defense versus archetype. So that's almost like DVP or defense versus position. But it goes a step further. So that's going to be the focus of the video, using that to help us potentially find some players in good or not so good matchups on today's NBA slate. So just keep in mind that the projections in today's video, they're going to change throughout the day. And you guys got to be flexible when injury news comes out, when, the projections start to change. If PrizePicks goes too high on a player, well, then maybe we go low, and vice versa. If they go low, then we go high. I mean, we got to find the edge somewhere here, right? So let's start getting into it. The very first game here is going to be the Washington Wizards versus the Memphis Grizzlies. This game tips off at 8:10 p.m. over on PrizePicks. A lot of big names to talk about. On the Washington side, we've got Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, of course. And then over on the Memphis side, we've got Ja Morant, Jonas Valanciunas. And of course, with there just being 2 games, they've added a lot of these role players in, which can be a little more tricky for us to try and project. So let's start things off with a guy that jumps out to me, and that's Ja Morant, who's projected at 40 tonight. Ja is at 38.71 over on Roto Grinders. And of course, we use Roto Grinders as a way to kind of compare against PrizePicks and see if PrizePicks is a little high, a little low. And then we have Roto Grinders preloaded with the FanDuel projections, because the scoring system on FanDuel and on PrizePicks are exactly the same. And, for you Monkey Knife Fight players out there, it's the same for them too. So easy for us to use this as a reference to compare site by site here. So Ja Morant, 38.71, that would make him a favorite to go under. Now, let's look at Ja's last few games here and get a better idea of how he's been playing. So in his last 5, he's got an under, an under, an under, a big over, and a big over. So he's went under 3 times, over 2 times in his last 5 games. Now, he does have a previous matchup here against Washington, a very recent matchup against Washington back on March 2nd, where he put up 55 fantasy points. So that would put him well over tonight's projection of 40. So that could be a good sign of things to come here for the Memphis Grizzlies and for Ja Morant. Now, Tonight, he's expected to play 33 minutes. He is a combo guard. Now, looking at this DVA number here, 55.11. What that means is that the Washington Wizards are giving up over 55 fantasy points per game to players that fit the same classification as Ja Morant, combo guard. So that's a very good sign for things to come, hopefully, for Ja Morant. Of course, he's well rested, as should all these players be with the break that they just had during All-Star Weekend. So I expect a fresh and revitalized Ja Morant. Hopefully he comes out motivated and there's no rust to knock off or anything like that. But in terms of DVA, this is a good situation for him, a plus matchup for him. He's playing over 30 minutes per night, 1.17 fantasy points per minute, and his usage is over 30, almost at 31. So fantastic usage for Ja Morant as well. So things are shaping up quite nicely here for Ja Morant. But final verdict, RotoGrinders has him under the fantasy projection of 40 over on PrizePicks. But this game's going to have a lot of points being scored. It looks like it's going to be a very close spread. So I think there's a good shot here for Ja Morant to maybe not reach 55 like he did last time these two teams met. But I do think that him going over 38 is very possible. And I think 40 even is possible. So I'm taking the over on Ja Morant. Now, another guy that's jumping off the page here is going to be Russell Westbrook. He's projected at 50 over on PrizePicks. Over on RotoGrinders, they've also got him at 50. So both sites kind of aligning here on this projection for Russell Westbrook. Both believe that 50 is the way to go. Now, we can look at his last 5 games and that last game that he played against Memphis to get a better idea of how Russell Westbrook has been performing as of late. So if we go back to his 5th game here, he dropped 47 fantasy points. That would be under 50. 54.8 puts him over, 44.2 under, 53.7 against Memphis would be an over by a few points, and then 65.3, a big over on tonight's projection of 50. So in his last 5 games, guys, he's got three games of him going over, 2 games of him going under. So the overs have been the way to go for Russ. I mean, he just seems to have really found his stride here lately with this Washington Wizards ball club. Now tonight, he's expected to play 36 minutes, so very healthy minute projection for him. Combo guards against Memphis. Memphis giving up 42.65 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Russell Westbrook. Now, that puts him as the 28th least giving or most stingiest defense, but that rating really, we can throw that out because this number here is more important. How many fantasy points per game that they're giving up to combo guards? And this number is sticking out to me, especially when you factor in that just any old generic combo guard gets 42.65 fantasy points, and then you factor in it's not just a generic anybody combo guard, it's Russell Westbrook, one of the better combo guards in the league. So loving this spot here for Russ. Now he's played over 34 minutes per game for the season, 1.35 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of nearly 34, which is elite usage, elite fantasy points per minute numbers for Russ. So I think that there's a good shot that he can go over 50. I know it seems like a high number for him, but when you consider that the totals are what they are, these two teams are going to combine for over 230 points, and the spread is just 3. I mean, it's a green light across the board here. This should be a game where Russell Westbrook comes out and dominates. So loving the way it's setting up for him. Another guy that's jumping out at me is Rui Hachimura. Now, Hachimura has been a guy who lately hasn't been performing very well, but his projection at 22.5 seems kind of low. I think that's a number that maybe Hachimura can hit here in this matchup against this Grizzlies team. So let's take a look and see where they've got him projected. They got him at 24.91, so the over looking like the way to go. According to RotoGrinders, they also agree with me that 22.5 seems a little light for Hachimura. Now let's look at his last 5 games here because it tells a different tale here. In his last 5, he's got 1 game where he's went over by quite a bit at 28. Then he's got 4 in a row where he's went under 22.5. So it's been tough sledding here for Hachimura. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat this or beat around the bush. He's went under tonight's projection 4 out of 5 games. So the under has been the way to go. And you can see this last game here versus Memphis back on March 2nd, he only put up 13.9 fantasy points. So definitely some merit to taking the under on Rui Hachimura at 22.5. Now, why I have some optimism for Hachimura going over here. Well, he's going to be playing 32 minutes, so that's a healthy number. Of course, Roto Grinders, they've already established that they like the over on him. But versatile forwards against this Grizzlies team have done pretty well. The Grizzlies are allowing over 37 fantasy points per game to versatile forwards like Rui Hachimura. So that's looking pretty good. Now, working against Hachimura is his fantasy points per minute at 0.76, pretty low. That puts him under 1 fantasy point per minute, which isn't good. 1 or more fantasy points per minute for me personally is kind of the gold standard, what I look for when I try to predict or project good fantasy output from any of these players. And the usage rating at 17.33, also pretty disappointing, but you got to keep in mind, this guy is playing alongside of Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, 2 guys who have tremendous usage ratings, 2 guys who put up tons of fantasy points per minute. So that just leaves leftovers, scraps for Rui Hachimura. So it's looking like maybe the under is the way to go on Rui, and that maybe we just throw this 24.91 projection on Roto Grinders out the window and ride the under on Hachimura. All right, so let's see if there's anybody else that's jumping out here. Brandon Clark could be an interesting play. I know it's a guy that we haven't clicked his name a whole lot or talked about him a ton on the channel this season, but he's projected at 26 fantasy points right now. And if we look at Roto Grinders, they got him at 26.27, so a slight over versus the projection on PrizePicks. And there's good reason for that. But let's get into his game logs real quick. And in his last 5, it's been an up and down roller coaster ride for Brandon Clark. His 5th game back, 23.1 puts him under. Then he puts up just 6 fantasy points, playing just 16 minutes in that game. Very, very bad game there. But then he bounces back nicely here, playing 20 minutes, putting up 34.9 fantasy points. And then another game here where he plays 34 minutes and puts up 34 fantasy points. And then finally his last game, 22.1 fantasy points. So in his last 5, guys, he's got 2 games where he's went over, 3 games where he's went under, and 1 game where he went way, way under with just 6 fantasy points. So kind of disappointing there. But thing that stands out to me is his last meeting against Washington, where he dropped that 34 fantasy point number. So that gives you a little bit of hope that maybe the over is within reach for Brandon Clark tonight. Now his projected minutes are at 25. We already talked about that the projections are at 26.27, so they like a slight over versus PrizePicks. He's a versatile big. Now, working in his favor is the fact that the Washington Wizards have allowed over 32.87 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs like Brandon Clark. So that is a plus situation, a plus DVA matchup for him. 0.98 fantasy points per minute and a usage rating of 17.88. Fantasy points per minute, not bad, but the usage rating, kind of leaves a bit on the table there. You wish that usage rating was a bit higher than 17. So that's an interesting play for a potential over. But looking at the game logs, very volatile, very, very shaky. So I can understand you not trusting him. Let's see if there's anybody else that's jumping out in terms of taking an over here. Yeah, I mean, maybe Robin Lopez, if you really want to, figure this puzzle out. He's projected at 15 fantasy points over on PrizePicks. They've got him at 17.03 fantasy points over on Roto Grinders. So they got him over on Roto Grinders by 2 points, which would be a pretty good edge for us if we want to take the over on Robin Lopez. Let's just dig into his game logs real quick and see what he's been up to. In his last 5, it's been pretty shaky here. Going back here against Denver, 12.6 puts him under 15, 11.7 under, 17.1, 17, and 23 though. 3 games in a row where he's went over 15 fantasy points. So looking at his minutes trends here, 26, 13, 27, 17, 25. So you could see, when he's in the game and he's getting minutes, he's usually putting up some pretty decent fantasy point per minute numbers. But it's been hard to trust his minutes from a game-to-game basis. So I can understand you not trusting Robin Lopez here. The only reason that I think he's kind of interesting is that he matches up well with Jonas Valanciunas. So you may see Robin Lopez out on the floor more than you typically would. But yeah, I'm not necessarily trusting this play. I don't know that I want to actually go here and try and take the over on Robin Lopez, but the thing that really stands out to me is the fact that post-up bigs, they're getting over 29 fantasy points per game versus this Grizzlies squad. So there is some merit to taking an over on Robin Lopez if you want to roll the dice. Now moving on down the line here, Bradley Beal, he's one of those guys that's kind of matchup proof. Yeah, the DVA isn't really strong here in his favor, but he's Bradley Beal and he gets buckets. So this could be a situation where we just throw all the projections and the numbers out the window and just play a good basketball player in this situation. But what stands out here is that against Memphis, his last meeting, 34.7 fantasy points. So maybe taking the under on Beal is the way to go. They've got him at 49 on PrizePicks, 47.8 on RotoGrinders. So he could be a candidate for an underplay if you're looking to go under on some of these guys. I know a lot of you like playing the overs. It's more fun to cheer for a guy when you're trying to root him on to go over a projection or over on a single stat, but sometimes it just makes more sense to go under. But it's hard to go under on a superstar like Bradley Beal and feel good about it. So I totally get that. Anybody else sticking out in this game? Jonas Valanciunas, he's projected at 38 on PrizePicks. They've got him at 35.79 over on RotoGrinders. So this could be another under candidate here. And let's look at his recent game logs and see how he's been performing. So it's been another one of those volatile game logs here. So 37 puts him under, 42.7 puts him over, 11.2 under, 32.7 under, and 30.4 under. So he's went under 38 fantasy points in 4 out of his last 5 games. And his last matchup against Washington was an under at 32.7. So that puts him quite a bit under 38. So it's been hard to trust Jonas Valanciunas to go over this 38 number. And he's also in a negative DVA situation here. 27.32 fantasy points per game allowed by this Washington team. So Valanciunas makes for a good underplay in my opinion. Who else we got here? Dillon Brooks is at 28. He's at 26.5 over on RotoGrinders. Again, a negative DVA spot for Dillon Brooks. How has he been playing in his last 5? Well, 26.4 under, 25.4 under, 16.9 under, 31.6 over, and then this huge eruption here against Milwaukee where he goes for 55.3 fantasy points. Look, that's not going to happen very often with a guy like Dillon Brooks. It's just not. But the fact that he's shown that type of upside, well, there's a little bit of an argument to be made here that in his last 2 games he's went over. Maybe the over's the way to go here for Dillon Brooks. He's going to be playing 30 minutes. 29.2 minutes per game for the season on average, 0.93 fantasy points per minute, and his usage ratings at 26.34. So not bad numbers when you start digging in a little deeper on Dillon Brooks. Otherwise, I'm not seeing a whole lot here that I'm really, really liking. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this game. I mean, I dug in deep and tried to talk about as many players that I thought were worthy to talk about here. So hopefully you land on some good names there. So the next game and the last game for tonight's 2-game NBA slate is the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Mavericks. This game tips off at 8:40 p.m. over on PrizePicks, and we got some pretty good names to talk about in this game. We got the likes of DeMar DeRozan, Luka Doncic, DeJounte Murray, who's been playing very good basketball lately, Kristaps Porzingis. Yeah, and I mean, as far as star power, that's about as starry as it's going to get. But look at that, the game totals here. Dallas 113.75, San Antonio 109.75. So the spread's 4 points. It's going to stay competitive and close, according to Vegas odds makers. Not a ton of combined points on the board here, falling short of 230, which is what I look for in terms of fantasy upside. But still, there's going to be some good plays to be had in this one. So let's start things off with a guy that's jumping out at me, and that is Mr. Luka Doncic. He's projected at 55. They got him at 53.36 on RotoGrinders, which puts him under his 55 projection. But let's look at his game logs and see how he's been playing in his last few. So 41.9, not good there. He falls well short of 55. He lands right on 55 in his next game. 30.6 puts him way under 55. 49.7 puts him under 55, and 54.5 against Orlando, which is a soft matchup on paper, but he can't get to 55 or more fantasy points in that one. So guys, in his last 5, he hasn't been playing fantastic basketball. He's got 4 unders and 1 push on tonight's projection of 55. So little worrisome for Luka Doncic. Now let's look at his minutes tonight. He's expected to play about 36, good healthy minute total there. He is a combo guard. Now working in his favor is this number right here, 58.25. That represents the amount of fantasy points per game that the San Antonio Spurs are giving up to combo guards like Luka Doncic. They are the 3rd most generous, most giving team to combo guards in the NBA. So that's definitely something to keep in mind there, working in Luka's favor. 35.1 minutes per game, good minute per game average, 1.49 fantasy points per minute, and his usage ratings over 35. Guys, this is some of the best that you're going to see in the NBA in terms of fantasy points per minute and in terms of usage. So fantastic situation here for Luka Doncic. I think this is one where I'm probably leaning more toward the over on Luka based on what I'm seeing here. He's due for a bounce back game. I know he didn't get as much rest as some of these other guys because he was involved in the All-Star game, but yeah, I think he does just fine here against San Antonio. So I'm probably leaning more toward the over on Luka Doncic. Let's see who else is standing out, though. DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray, it looks like he is in a good spot here. So let's talk Murray real quick. He's projected at 38. They got him at 36.12 over on Roto Grinders. Now, combo guards have done well against Dallas, but let's look at his game logs real quick to get a better idea of how DeJounte Murray's been playing in his last several games. So even going back to his 6th game here, 55.4, just crushing it, 52.8, 47.7, 36.2, 41.2, 33.3. So you can see, guys, he has been going over more often than not in his last 6 games, going over in 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 6. So hard to click the under on DeJounte Murray here based on the way that he's been playing. Now, going to his minutes today, he's projected to play about 32. Good minute total. Combo guards against Dallas, although Dallas does rank 29th in terms of how stingy or how well that they limit opposing combo guards fantasy point per game wise. I mean, they're still giving up 42.6, which puts DeJounte Murray's projection in a plus DVA situation here, meaning that this average points allowed by the Mavericks team to combo guards is higher than his projection of 38 tonight. So I think there's some potential for a ceiling type of game here, some upside for DeJounte Murray. Again, well rested coming off the All-Star break, playing 31 minutes per game, 1.15 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of almost 24. Pretty good. Not great, not elite numbers, but you know, he is sharing the basketball with guys like DeMar DeRozan. So those numbers, not bad for his situation. So I'm leaning more toward taking the over on DeJounte Murray. Personally, I think this is a situation where the game stays close. There's enough points on the board where I think Murray's been playing just very good basketball and could go over in this one. Let's see who else is standing out here. We got Kristaps Porzingis. He's at 39 on PrizePicks, 38.08 over on Roto Grinders. This one's going to be kind of a tough call for me, but let's look at his game logs and see how Porzingis has been doing recently. So got to go back a ways here. He missed 3 games in a row, so we got to go back all the way to February 12th to get to his 5th game. 46.9 in that one, though. He went well over 39. 35.6 puts him under, misses 3 games in a row, as I mentioned before, and he comes back, puts up 35.8, which puts him under 39, 38.5 puts him under 39, and a 33.6 puts him under. So he's got 4 games in a row now, guys, where he has went under 39 fantasy points. He does have 1 game, though, where he's went over quite easily. So it's been a mixed bag here, but mostly under has been the way to go for Kristaps. Now, digging in a little further here, he's going to play about 33 minutes, according to the fine folks over at Roto Grinders. He is a versatile big. The Spurs, pretty generous to versatile bigs, giving up over 37 fantasy points per game. So not quite a plus or positive situation, meaning that this average points per game allowed by the Spurs is a little bit lower than his projection at 39, but you could probably expect 35 to 40 fantasy points to be scored by Porzingis tonight. He's playing a little over 30 minutes per game, 1.22 fantasy points per minute, and his usage rating's over 25, so very good numbers for Porzingis. So it's going to be one of those situations. It's going to be tough to figure out. Right now, I'd probably lean toward the under, but you could always fade this situation, meaning don't touch it. Don't play him and find a different situation that you like a little bit more. Like his single stat points were at 19.5. I'd like him going over 19.5 real life actual points. Now, I think that number has crept up in terms of single stat. So if he's up there at like 20.5 or 21 points, it might be a way to go under on Porzingis if that single stat scoring number has went up too high. So moving along, let's see who else we like here. I heard some people in our Discord community. By the way, if you're not a member of the Discord, I'll leave a link down in the description of this video. Totally free to get in, free for you to get into the Discord. We talk all different kind of sports in there, not just NBA. We talk CS:GO, League of Legends, tennis, PGA, hockey, college basketball, you name it. We're doing it. We're playing it on PrizePicks. So many different offerings over there. But let's look at LaMarcus Aldridge real quick because something's standing out to me and it's a little funky, but he's at 24 fantasy points on PrizePicks. If we look at Roto Grinders, they got him at 16.87. Do they know something that PrizePicks perhaps doesn't know? I don't know. They got him quite a bit under his projection here. I mean, you're talking about a big gap here of almost 8 fantasy points different. So let's look at his recent games and see how Aldridge has done. All right, so you can see he's got a lot of blanks in his game log, meaning he's missed a lot of games here recently. But if we go back to his 5th game, all the way back on January 30th, yes, that seems like forever ago, he did put up 26 fantasy points, which puts him over. 18.2 puts him under. Now he misses 6 games in a row. Comes back, puts up 24.9, 30, and a measly 4.8, but he only played 15 minutes in that game. So I know you guys were talking about LaMarcus Aldridge in the Discord. Maybe you guys are seeing something that I'm not seeing, but I'm just not picking up strong vibes to go over on LaMarcus Aldridge, especially since he's kind of dealing with a little bit of an illness. I think maybe his minutes coming off of that are reduced a little bit. Maybe it impacts his performance. But overall here, he's went over in his last 5 games 3 times, going under 2 times. And really his last game was just completely miserable. 4.8 fantasy points. We almost outscored him. That's how low it was. So yeah, been hard to trust LaMarcus Aldridge with the way that he's missed a lot of time and his game logs are so up and down. So he'd probably just be a situation for me where I would fade him or probably lean toward the under on him. But let's see if there's anybody else that's really standing out here. Rudy Gay, he's not up on the board. He's making his return after a long layoff. DeMar DeRozan, he's one of the bigger names that we should probably discuss here. He's at 41 fantasy points over on PrizePicks, but you look at him on Roto Grinders, he's at 35.5. So again, a huge difference in between what you're seeing on PrizePicks versus some of these other sites. So they like the under. Let's dig into his game logs and see how 41 is treating DeMar DeRozan here in his last 5. Well, going back to February 14th on Valentine's Day, 28.9. Wasn't feeling the love. If you took the over there, that would be a big under. Then he misses the next game, comes back. 54.7 puts him well over 41, 42.7, 43.3. So that's 3 games in a row where he's gone over 41. Then he comes back against OKC just before the All-Star break. 29.2 puts him under. So in his last 5 games, guys, he's went over 3 times, under 2 times. It's been kind of a difficult guy to predict and figure out here in some of these recent games. So let's look at his minutes and some of these other metrics here. 34 minutes is his projected total tonight. Not bad. He's a scoring wing. The Mavericks have done a good job at limiting scoring wings to just 25.05 fantasy points per game. So this is definitely a negative situation in terms of DVA for DeMar DeRozan. Should be well rested though. 33.8 minutes per game. Good number there. 1.13 fantasy points per minute and a usage rating of almost 25. So not bad in terms of some of these production numbers here. But I I am a little concerned that with the totals being a little lower than I like, and with the fact that the Mavericks have done a pretty good job defensively against guys like DeRozan in the past, that this could be a hard number for DeRozan to hit, this 41. So I'd probably lean toward the under personally. Anybody else standing out? Lonnie Walker, he's projected at 19 on PrizePicks, 16.5 on RotoGrinders. So they like the under on Lonnie Walker. With Derek White coming back, maybe he cuts into Walker's production just a little bit. Jacob Podol, he's a guy who was just smashing before All-Star break. He's at 26 tonight, 25 over on PrizePicks. Let's talk about him real quick. Matchup doesn't look like it's the easiest, but if we look at his last 5 games and even further back than that, I mean, we'll go back to February 12th here, 45.9, just crushing the 26, 36, crushes 26. So that's 2 overs. Here's another over, and then he finally came back down to earth, but he only played 22 minutes, puts up 14 fantasy points against OKC. So in his last several games here, I mean, he's went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7 games. So fantastic numbers there. And maybe they reduced his minutes to get him a little bit of rest right before All-Star break. Start that vacation a little bit early for Jacob Podol. But this could be a spot where he continues to go over the 26 projection here. Now, post-up bigs, they've been pretty limited or held in check by this Mavericks team. Mavericks allowing just 20.89 fantasy points per game to post up bigs. But when he's out there on the floor, not bad at 1 fantasy point per minute. He's not a high usage guy, and typically post up bigs just aren't high usage guys. So interesting case study there for Jacob Podol. But nobody else really jumping out here. Tim Hardaway Jr., is he up on the board? Yeah, he's at 24 on PrizePicks. They got him at 22.63 on RotoGrinders. Negative DVA situation, so I'd probably lean toward the under on THJ. He tends to do better when a guy like Luke is out of the lineup or a guy like Porzingis is out of the lineup, but that's not the case tonight. But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. It's good to be back, though. Good to be talking NBA. This is a good warm-up, tune-up video for me, so we'll be back in full swing of things tomorrow. I think tomorrow's slate is 11 NBA games on the slate, so huge day tomorrow. Lots to discuss in tomorrow's video, but you guys let me know, who are you liking in the video today? Who are you not liking? Is there anybody that I skipped over that you wish I would have talked about? Tell me why. Drop a comment down in the comment section below. And until the next one, guys, good luck tonight. NBA's back. Let's try and win some money. Peace.